Literally one right here. Molly's Game. Molly's Game stars Jessica Chastain, Idris Elba, and Kevin Costner. And it's based on a true story about this woman named Molly Bloom. She was an Olympic class skier, and she had an unfortunate accident, and she ended up having to switch career paths, and so she ended up becoming she got involved in the world of gambling, and she eventually ended up running like the world's most exclusive high-stakes poker game, and she ran it for like a decade before she was arrested in the middle of the night by the FBI. And but a lot of her players included Hollywood royalty, like sports stars, business titans, and also too, I guess unbeknownst to her, the Russian mob, different members of the Russian mob got involved in her poker games. And but it was a very interesting movie. I didn't know what to expect from this. Maybe I kind of did, but like I didn't know it was based on a true story. Because Molly Bloom, she put out a book about, I guess, everything that she experienced in these poker games, and also like how she got started. And so I guess a lot of what's in this movie is from her book, but except that in the movie, because eventually she hires this lawyer by the name of Charlie Jaffe, and her lawyer, he eventually like prods her enough in order to get her to really tell the truth, because there was a lot of information that she left out, that she omitted from her book, and in order to protect certain people and certain reputations. And so I really like Jessica Chastain in this movie. I feel like it was one of her best performances, although I will say like the last 2 or 3 movies I saw her in, she also did a pretty good job. But I don't know, I like how, the way she portrayed Molly Bloom in this. Granted, I don't know much about the actual Molly Bloom, but at least in this movie, I like that, how she, she always made sure to come off like as really confident and just really sure of herself, and which made sense, being involved in, the world of high-stakes poker. And it was interesting to see how she got started, and I like how the movie starts, because it starts, shows her kind of like, how she grew up, and when she was trained by her father. Her father's played by Kevin Costner, and he quickly became like her coach, her Olympic coach, and he was definitely, I guess, her father was definitely pretty hard on her, but it was mostly because he really believed in her, and he really believed in her abilities as an athlete, a skier. Unfortunately, there was this like weird fluke accident where when she was skiing down the hill, she was in the Winter Olympics. I forget which Winter Olympics, but when she was going down the hill, and there was some kind of like really small tree, tree stump, I want to say, maybe even like small tree branch that was like kind of poking out from under the snow. And I guess, I don't know, whoever inspects those things during Olympic Games, like, I imagine like it could be very easy to miss like a very small kind of tree branch poking out of the ground, and so especially if it's covered by snow, which this one was, I guess. And so yeah, unfortunately, she ended up going over it, and then it threw her off balance, and she just went flying. She went up into the air and just like ended up rolling, and then landed pretty hard on the ground, and even though she was okay, and then in addition to that, she had already, she had already been, when she was a little girl, she was diagnosed with having scoliosis, which I guess has something to do with having a curved spine, and so she got it corrected, but I guess after she had that accident, it messed up her spine even more, and so that was it. She had to give up on her skiing career, and which definitely sucked. But then, like I said, then she eventually moved on. She moved out to LA, stayed with a friend, and then just got involved in like things like waitressing and being a secretary, and that's how she ended up being like an assistant for this guy who ran a high stakes poker game at some place called the Cobra Lounge in LA, and then I guess during different times of the month, they would have these like secret poker games, and I was also surprised to see that Michael Cera, the actor Michael Cera, was in this. Of course, he's been in other movies like Superbad and Scott Pilgrim. I forget a whole bunch of other movies. But I think this is like the first like actual serious role I've seen him in. Because he's supposed to play like, I don't think he's supposed to play himself, but possibly like some other actor, some other well-known actor. And he ends up becoming kind of like friends with Molly, but not really, because he ends up just being all about the money, and because he ends up being like the top earner, like pretty much the number one winner of each poker game, and then he eventually like tells Molly that he wants a cut of the earnings that she gets, and eventually it's like the whole thing becomes like a big numbers game, and eventually it becomes difficult, difficult for Molly to continue on with the game. But then she eventually she decides to move out to New York City, and she creates another high stakes poker game there, and except then that time more criminals become aware of her high stakes poker game, and it becomes even more complicated, and eventually like one night some member of the mob, or like two guys, approach her at a club somewhere, and they tell her that they'd be willing to help her collect on certain debts, and she turns them down because she doesn't want to get involved with the mob in any way. And then later, I think that same night or the next day, another guy from the mob goes to her apartment, and he just beats her up and takes whatever money she has in her safe, and which includes like jewelry and gold bars, and then even after that, she still refuses to tell anyone about it, at least for a very long time. Not until she finally hires a lawyer, after having been arrested by the FBI, and eventually the whole thing turns out where the FBI, they want her to dish on all these people, they want her to give up all this information about all the players in her games and that participated in these high stake games, and just for what reason? Not because they want to be able to really punish someone. And of course, like, at one point, then, the FBI, they become convinced, like, they're convinced that she has a lot more to do with the mob than she's, like, letting on, and which really, she doesn't, at least in the movie, because there's really nothing to tie her to the mob or any of the mob's activities. It's just that, they just happened to become aware of her high stakes poker games, and they wanted a cut of her money, and that was pretty much the extent of her interactions with the mob. And so, and then ultimately, towards the end, the judge that I guess oversees, like, her case or whatever, like, the judge that's at part of her trial, and instead of, like, because even her lawyer tells her that she should plead guilty, either she pleads guilty or she makes a deal, but part of the deal would involve her handing over a lot of information about the different people that were the different players from her high stakes poker games, and again, which included, like, actors, producers, writers, and athletes, a lot of, I guess, supposedly well-known people, but she refused to hand over that information because, which I admire her for that. I can understand why she didn't want to do that. Because she even says, like, several times in the movie that if she were to hand over all that information, it would have ruined a lot of lives. It would have broken up a lot of families. People would have been hurt, not just emotionally, but financially, and would have caused a whole lot of pain and suffering, and I guess, and she didn't want to feel responsible for that, so she refused to make any kind of deal. She decided to plead guilty to everything. And then after that, then the judge, instead of, like, instead of giving her prison time, jail time, he just decided to give her, like, 200 hours of community service, and have her be under, I want to say, like, be on parole or something like that, and she would have to check in, I guess, I don't know, like a couple of times a month or something like that, or every other week. And so, yeah, she ended up getting off, I guess, relatively easy. Which I thought was interesting, because I expected that the judge was going to be real strict, like real harsh on her, but no, he was, he seemed like even he pretty much, even he didn't believe that she should, hand over all this information about all these different players, and just because the FBI was pressuring her to do it, which definitely made sense. To me, it made sense. So, I'm glad that the judge was kind of, like, on the same level with that. And so, yeah. I mean, it was definitely, I guess, not like the happiest of endings, but still interesting nonetheless, and I mean, I don't really think I spoiled anything. Or maybe I did. No, there's a lot of stuff that I left out, and I mean, because it's, it's a biographical, memoir-like kind of movie, I guess, and a lot of the information, pretty sure you can look up, and but I guess for me, like, I liked the performances in this movie, and again, especially Jessica Chastain's performance throughout. yeah, I think she's definitely one of my favorites. One of my favorite actresses. Yeah, I don't know. Again, the best way I can describe her performance is like confident and strong, but also like down to earth, like very realistic. And so yeah, I mean, I guess definitely after seeing this movie, it made me want to pick up the book. So at least just to kind of like skim through it, see if like it's just as interesting. So, but I don't know, because supposedly Molly Bloom left out a lot of information, and you know, she decided not to disclose a lot of things, and so yeah, I don't know. Overall, I would give the movie. I'd say I give it. I gotta give it at least 8 out of 10, 8.5 at the most. Yeah. I would say the only thing I didn't like about this movie was if it felt a little too long. Like, it's another one of those movies that felt a little too long. But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of filler information. It was just because, you know, it happened to be a lot of information, a lot of details that were definitely necessary to her trial, necessary to her story, and in order to, you know, definitely necessary to get across to, you know, the viewer that this actually happened, and, you know, that these events really did occur. And so, yeah. So yeah, once again, I give it 8 out of 10. That'll do for my review of Molly's Game. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.